Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 39 of Buha's Block. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing what is next with the Lakers offseason as we are less than 24 hours away from free agency. There's been a lot of developments, including the big news of the day that LeBron James will be opting out and declining his $51.4 million player option, though he is opting out with the intention to re-sign, as was reported by The Athletic's Shams Charania. So we're going to touch on the Lakers roster, some of their financial options, the Klay Thompson buzz, which has been growing in momentum over the past few hours, and then look at what the Lakers could actually do and frankly what they should do. I think the Lakers have no excuse to not make a big move. They have the resources to do so, whether it is LeBron taking a pay cut, which I will touch on, or the Lakers making a move with some of their mid-sized salary, their 2 first-round picks that they can trade, and or their 3 pick swaps. The Lakers have the resources to upgrade this roster and really could do a couple of moves to enhance this roster. So let's get into the recap of today and then what is next. Okay, so the news of the day was LeBron James declined his $51.4 million player option and will be opting out to technically test free agency, though again, his intention is to re-sign with the Lakers. Now, the interesting wrinkle with this is that according to Bleacher Report and ESPN, LeBron James is willing to take a pay cut if the Lakers could land a difference maker with their non-taxpayer mid-level exception of about $12.9 million. So the 3 names that ESPN referenced were Klay Thompson, James Harden, and Jonas Valanciunas. A wide range of player types there. I will say that I don't see James Harden signing for the non-taxpayer MLE. That said, I didn't think Klay Thompson would sign for the non-taxpayer MLE, but that's the way that this is trending. And whether it's the Lakers or the Mavericks or potentially even the Clippers, it looks like he's likely going to be signing with some Western Conference team in that price range. So that is a possibility, certainly with the Lakers. Jonas Valanciunas, I am less sold on personally. I think people are thinking about where he was at a few years ago rather than where he's currently at. Like, yes, he would check some of the boxes of being a big body. He's obviously very talented offensively, can score in the post, a really good rebounder, a really physical presence, and could pop out for 16, 18 footers, can even make some threes. But I look at his defensive mobility as a significant weakness. And I look at the Lakers game against the Pelicans, that final regular season game that was essentially going to determine the play-in order, where the Lakers just targeted Jonas Valanciunas at the beginning of that game and essentially played him off the floor. If you remember, there were stretches where the Pelicans went with either Larry Nance Jr. at center from that point on, or just no center on the floor at all. So Jonas Valanciunas as a defender, as a pick and roll defender, really, I mean, like as a post defender, he's got the size and he's got the strength. So like certainly there are some matchups where he can be useful, and he's a good defensive rebounder. So I'm not saying he doesn't have any utility defensively, but he is not quick. He's not a shot blocker. He's not a rim protector. And I think defensively, he can be played off the floor in certain matchups. So, and then on top of it, if you're like, if LeBron is willing to take the pay cut, that's LeBron's business. That's LeBron's money. I'm not going to tell him how to operate or what to do. And if he wants to do that to upgrade the roster, so be it. I just don't know if I view Jonas Valanciunas as that type of upgrade. Now, I do think Klay Thompson would be, and that will be a separate discussion I will touch on a little bit later in this episode. But Klay Thompson, I think for the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, that might be as good as it gets, and I do think he would help the Lakers. So again, more on that in a little bit. So LeBron is open to taking a pay cut. And the way that this would work is, so if LeBron takes a pay cut and the Lakers are going to use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, that would hard cap them at the first apron, which is about $178.7 million. So LeBron would have to take about a $16+ million pay cut from his $49.9 million max. So one of the pluses of LeBron opting out compared to him opting in is that he's saving the Lakers at least $1.5 million. Had LeBron opted in, he'd be on the books for $51.4 million. But with LeBron opting out, the max for him is $49.9 million. So that's a $1.5 million difference. And then if he's willing to take a pay cut, that's an even bigger gap. But for him to take a pay cut for the Lakers to open up that non-taxpayer mid-level exception and stay under that first apron, LeBron's contract would likely start in the $33 million range, which again is a $16, almost $17 million pay cut. And it might even have to be a little bit lower just to give the Lakers some wiggle room in case they want to make a trade or in case they want to sign someone during the season. Another option for the Lakers is doing a salary dump trade, similar to the trade that the Dallas Mavericks just did with the Detroit Pistons, where they dumped Tim Hardaway Jr. onto the Pistons. So if the Lakers do that with, I don't see them doing it with like a Rui or a Vando or a Gabe, but maybe they do it with one of the minimum guys, a Christian Wood, a Jackson Hayes, a Cam Reddish. Maybe they do a couple of separate trades, dumping those guys and attaching assets, be it a couple seconds or even 3 seconds. And it is a little bit of a price, but if you are improving the roster, creating an open roster spot to sign someone else, to sign a better veteran minimum player, or to keep Max Christie. And that's the other thing here is that if we assume that LeBron is re-signing, the Lakers are at 14 players. If you look at it, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell. That's the starters from last season. Then it's Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, Dalton Connect, Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Maxwell Lewis, and Bronny James. That's 14 players. So if you're adding a Klay Thompson or a Jonas Valanciunas with the non-taxpayer MLE, that brings you to 15, and you can't re-sign Max Christie. And the Lakers today, I'm told by team sources, rendered a qualifying offer for Max Christie, so they are making him a restricted free agent. The Lakers intend to retain Max Christie. They view him as a rotation player for next season. So if the Lakers want to keep Max Christie and sign a Klay Thompson or a Jonas Valanciunas or another player with their non-taxpayer mid-level exception, there's a lot of moving parts with this. LeBron needs to be willing to take a pay cut. He needs to be okay with the player that the Lakers are getting, but then they also likely need to do at least one salary dump trade, if not a couple, to create some more cap flexibility and to also create an empty roster spot for the Lakers to retain Max Christie. So it gets tricky. There's a lot of different ways that this can play out, but the most straightforward way is the Lakers doing some type of salary dump where they would have to attach assets, and maybe Jalen Hood-Schifino is enough of an asset on his own that a team would just take him straight up as a gamble on him. And maybe that's just the simplest ways. You don't have to attach an asset, or maybe you attach like 1 second round pick and say, hey, take Jalen Hood-Schifino and 1 second round pick. But in terms of like the Lakers need to likely salary dump someone to keep Max Christie and add someone with the non-taxpayer MLE. Now, if the Lakers cannot land the type of player that LeBron wants with the non-taxpayer MLE, he plans on signing the max, as Rich Paul told ESPN. And in that case, the Lakers have a lot less flexibility because that would bring them to about $182.3 million, which would be above the first apron, but under the second apron of about $189.5 million. So what that means is that the Lakers would have about $7.2 million to play with for the final roster spot. And in theory, they would use that on Max Christie. So as long as Max is signing something like a 2-year, $14 million deal or a 3-year, $21 million deal, or somewhere in that annual value, the Lakers could keep him and stay under the second apron. Though again, they'd probably like to keep his dollar figure a little bit lower just to have some flexibility there in case something pops up during the season where they want to make a move or they want to sign someone and create some flexibility. So again, there are a lot of ways that this can play out, but it's a big swing between LeBron taking a pay cut and not taking a pay cut. If he takes a pay cut, there's a chance the Lakers could sign a Klay Thompson and keep Max Christie if they could do a separate salary dumping transaction. And then if he does not take the pay cut and he signs for the max, then it really comes down to the Lakers likely retaining one of their free agents between Max Christie, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Taurean Prince, and then not making an addition unless they do a salary dump and can create some cap space. So a lot of moving parts here, a lot to unpack, but I wanted to touch on just some of the events of the day. Also worth noting that Cam Reddish predictably opted in to his $2.5 million for next season. And I think he's another guy, again, looking at Wood, Hayes, and Reddish, where the Lakers made bets on those guys with the 1+1 offers that they gave them last summer. None of them panned out because none of those guys had offers for more than the veteran minimum. That's why all three guys opted in. It's never a great sign when someone has a minimum contract player option and they opt in. That means they are not confident in their potential market. And I think Jackson Hayes would have landed somewhere with a minimum contract to be a backup center somewhere. Those guys did not outperform their contracts clearly. And I think Wood and Reddish especially are candidates to potentially be salary dumped or included in a larger trade if the Lakers decide to trade a D'Angelo Russell or a Rui Hachimura, a Jared Vanderbilt, a Gabe Vincent, etc. Maybe combine a couple of those guys and then try to lump in a Reddish and a Wood as part of the deal. So as things stand, the Lakers have 13 players under contract, and we will assume 14 players with LeBron intending to re-sign. And again, if he takes the pay cut, the Lakers have the option to add a player for the non-taxpayer MLE, though they have to stay under the first apron. Or if he takes the max, then the Lakers' only option would be someone in that $7 million range or less. So it could be either re-signing Max Christie or matching his offer, or using the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is about $5.2 million on a Taurean Prince or a Spencer Dinwiddie or a free agent, depending on the way the Lakers want to go with the roster. So that's where things stand currently. Some moving parts here. Again, the Lakers likely need to make a consolidation trade to open up some roster spots and to really create some better depth on this team. Because as I've been mentioning recently, if you look at it, you have Cam Reddish and Christian Wood, who to me, I have some serious doubts about as rotation players on good teams. You have Maxwell Lewis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, who really struggled in their rookie seasons and did not look anywhere close to being rotation players. And then you have Bronny James, who's going to spend most of his rookie season in the G League and adjusting to NBA life, and the Lakers developing him and working on his jumper and just getting him acclimated to the NBA. So that's five guys that the Lakers might have that aren't really rotation caliber players on this roster. And then that's also relying on Dalton Knecht being ready from day one as a rookie, which he should be. He's 23. But just looking at it, there's a chance they enter next season with only 9 or 10 really playable guys. And that is a potential issue with this roster. So the Lakers, I think, aside from even the Klay Thompson or Jonas Valanciunas or whoever they try to sign with that non-taxpayer MLE, I think they need to make at least one trade where they dump a player or do like a 2-for-1, if not a couple of those trades, to open up some flexibility, open up some roster spots, and just improve the depth of this roster. All right, now on to Klay Thompson, who I've been told by team and league sources the Lakers have legitimate interest in. There is mutual interest from Thompson's side. Remember, his father, Michael, was a member of the Showtime Lakers. He's also the radio color commentator for the Lakers, so he is a member of the organization. He travels on the team plane. I'm sure you see his videos with Mike Trudell. And Klay Thompson is a Southern California native. He was born in Los Angeles and grew up in Orange County. So there's plenty of incentive for Klay Thompson to have a homecoming, come be closer to parts of his family, be with his dad on a near daily basis, and play for the team that he grew up loving and being a fan of. And if it really comes down to $12.9 million for him with the Lakers versus $12.9 million for him with Dallas or even the Clippers, of course, Dallas state taxes, that's going to be more money that he's turning down to pick the Lakers over the Mavericks. But I think the ability to play with LeBron and play in LA and play for the Lakers and be around his dad, that is an attractive pitch that is going to be hard for Klay Thompson to turn down. I also think it's interesting that some of the teams with more cap space that could legitimately make an offer for him, be it Philly, Orlando, or Oklahoma City, Klay has not been tied to in the past 24 hours with the reporting about his likely departure from the Warriors. So it seems like he wants to stay in the Western Conference, wants to stay on the West Coast again with either LA team or with Dallas. So my quick thoughts on Klay Thompson, and I will say if Klay Thompson ends up on the Lakers, I will have an episode dedicated to him and his fit offensively and defensively and culture-wise. I will have Anthony Slater, the Golden State Warriors beat writer for The Athletic, come on and talk to him. He's covered Klay for years and has a good relationship with him. So we can break down his offense, his defense, and how he fits in the locker room and next to LeBron and next to AD. So I will spend more time on Klay in a future future episode if this is how this all plays out. But my quick thoughts on Klay. So he's 34 and he's lost a couple of years due to ACL and Achilles injuries. If you remember, it was his left ACL and his right Achilles. So he's had a significant injury in each leg, and it has sapped some of his athleticism, some of his burst. And he was never the most athletic or quickest guy, but he was a relatively good athlete. And one of his best attributes was his ability to defend smaller players. And when you saw the Warriors play a Kyrie Irving or a Damian Lillard, it was often Klay Thompson getting that initial primary matchup. And then sometimes they would switch Andre Iguodala, and the Warriors did a lot of switching anyway. So they were switching all the time, but like the primary matchup would often be Klay Thompson enveloping a point guard with his size, with his lateral quickness, and with his footwork and his stance. He's always had a really good defensive stance. So I think Klay Thompson is worth the non-taxpayer MLE. I think if he's available for the Lakers and LeBron is willing to take the discount, it's a no-brainer move. But I want to add a couple caveats because I see some of the Klay Thompson discourse, and I feel like people are looking at him the way he was in like 2016 or 2018 or even 2019 before his ACL injury. And the Klay Thompson of the last 3 years has had ups and downs, and he's been a much less consistent player. If you look at random NBA Instagram posts and search through the comments, you will see there are trolls in there still referencing Klay going 0 for 10 in an elimination game. So Klay, his ceiling is not quite the same of where it used to be. And also his floor is a bit lower. Like that was one of the things with prime Klay Thompson was he was going to give you 15 to 20 points at a minimum every single night, plus elite perimeter defense. And some nights he would explode for 40 points, 37 points in a quarter, like 60 points with taking fewer than 10 dribbles. Like he was capable of those types of nights. He's no longer that type of player. He's still an elite shooter. And I think much has been overblown with his shooting. I mean, if you look at the last 3 years, he's basically shooting 40% on nearly 10 3-point attempts per game. So that's elite. In his prime, I would say if you looked at like 2014 through 2019, he was at about 42% on about 8 attempts per game. So he is taking more threes. This past year was his highest 3-point rate. So Klay's become more of a spot up, catch and shoot 3-point shooter than ever. And he's taking more threes than he is twos by a more significant margin than earlier in his career. But the other thing with Klay that I want to clarify it with, again, looking at people talking about him and how he fits and his positions and different stuff, like Klay is a small forward. Klay is a 3, if not a 3.5. Klay over the last couple years has exclusively become a small forward and even a small ball power forward in some lineups. So if we're looking at the Lakers and how Klay Thompson would potentially fit in, I would pencil him in as the starting wing next to LeBron and Anthony Davis. So I just want to be clear that this is not shooting guard Klay Thompson from the Splash Brother glory days. This is the modern Klay Thompson, who's a 6'7", 220, 225 guy who, again, is more of a small forward or even a stretch 4, more so than he is a shooting guard. So anyone with the fantasy of him starting at shooting guard and maybe moving Austin to point guard, or him being the primary perimeter defender against smaller guards, like that Klay is not there. Now, he can hold his own in a lot of matchups against wings, and I think he's actually done a sneakily decent job against LeBron James. The Warriors have often put him on LeBron when they have Draymond defending AD in smaller lineups, and then they'll sometimes switch Draymond onto LeBron. And like Klay is a solid post defender. He's got a strong base, so he can't be easily bowled over, and he can stay in front of guys who are relatively as quick as him. But I just want to be clear with all Klay analysis that this is not 2019 Klay. This is not 2015 Klay. He has declined as a scorer and as a defender and as a shooter a little bit. I'd say he's still pretty close as a shooter. Again, like the ceiling, him hitting those like 9, 10, 11 3-point games aren't as frequent as they used to be. But like the shooting, that kind of stays with you for forever. And that's where I see the primary value is like, just imagine all the threes that Taurean Prince got last year, and even Rui Hachimura and Jared Vanderbilt. And imagine those shots going to Klay Thompson, or a defender not helping off of Klay Thompson, and the additional space that will be there in JJ Redick's offense with Klay Thompson on the weak side, flying around pin downs and baseline screens. So I think Klay's gravity and his 3-point shooting will do wonders for LA's offense. Defensively, I'm not as sold on his fit. I think a Klay, LeBron, AD front court is still lacking in like a lockdown perimeter defender. Klay is not quite that guy anymore. There's been a decent amount of slippage. So I would like to see the Lakers add another like at least 6'5", 6'6" defensive minded guy. And maybe that ends up being Max Christie. Maybe Max Christie takes a step in his development and is ready to step into a bigger role next season. But I think that's like the one thing with Klay is I think people still view him as a plus defender or an above average defender when he's much closer to an average defender and even in some cases a below average defender. And he's just not quite the same guy. Now, numbers wise, he's actually similar. If you look at like his per 36, his per 100 possessions, there's a drop off with the scoring. There's a slight drop off with the efficiency. It doesn't really show his defense, though. Again, his defense laterally, he's just a little bit slower, doesn't have the same burst, doesn't have the same athleticism. So he is better defending 3s and 4s. And to be clear, I'm for the Lakers signing him. I'm for the move. I just want to set realistic expectations, and I don't want people to act like this is a big 3. Like there's a reason why the Warriors don't want to give him the monster contract that he thinks he deserves, despite him being a 4-time champion, despite him being one of the Splash Bros, despite him, Draymond, and Steph having this special bond. Part of the reason why the Warriors are willing to move on from him is because of the slippage on both sides of the ball. So while I think it would be a good move for the Lakers to add him for the non-taxpayer MLE, well, I think he would be a good fit, and I think he would certainly help with his off-ball movement and gravity and three-point shooting. I think the fit of him being coached by JJ Redick would be amazing. I think he would also be a great influence for Dalton Connect, and those two on the floor at the same time running double pin downs and double floppy action and like just running around screens and causing havoc and allowing AD to operate in the post and allowing LeBron to get downhill. Like all these different things. Like if you just swap out Taurean Prince and adding Klay Thompson, that's a better player and a better fit, and he's going to elevate the Lakers offense. I just, again, want to set some realistic expectations with this. He's no longer a all-star caliber player, and I just want to be upfront about that. Now, again, I like the move. I would really like the move. I think it would be a really good move. I just want to temper expectations a bit. As for what's next with the Lakers, I said this in the D'Angelo Russell reaction video that the proverbial ball is in the Lakers' court as for how the rest of this offseason unfolds. And if you go back to the beginning of the week, Lakers Vice President of Basketball Operations and General Manager Rob Pelinka said twice in the JJ Redick press conference and the Dalton Connect press conference that with the new CBA and with the punitive restrictions with the first apron and the second apron, it is much more difficult to execute trades and make big moves under the new CBA. And while there is certainly some truth to that, if you look at the past week of activity on the trade market, especially in the Western Conference, the reality of what is actually happening has been much different. And I look at Oklahoma City trading for Alex Caruso. I look at Minnesota trading for the number 8 pick and Rob Dillingham. I look at Denver trading up for Deron Holmes and also trade dumping Reggie Jackson to create more space to keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I look at the Mavericks salary dumping Tim Hardaway Jr. to try and keep Derrick Jones Jr. or sign Thompson. And then I look at the New Orleans Pelicans, who pulled off a shrewd move by trading for DeJounte Murray at a price that appeared to be lower than what Atlanta had been reportedly looking for. So looking at the top and the middle of the West, all those teams are being active and aggressive with the moves that they're making. And now this is on the Lakers to do the same thing. Like had D'Angelo Russell opted out, the Lakers would be a little bit more restricted in terms of the contracts that they had and their optionality on the trade market. But with D'Angelo Russell opting in and LeBron James willing to potentially take a pay cut, the Lakers have several avenues to upgrade this roster with a big move or two. And there's no excuse if they don't do it. It is on them. Like you can combine D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura, or D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt, or D'Angelo Russell and Gabe Vincent, and go out and get a good player or a couple of solid players. And if you're willing to attach one or both of the first round picks and maybe even a pick swap or two, they have up to 3 pick swaps that they can include. Like those are 5 draft assets that you can include in potential trades in either a bigger trade or a couple small to medium sized trades to upgrade this roster. So the Lakers, like, yes, it is a tougher trade market. Teams are more wary of taking on money. And there's some new restrictions with the first and second apron, teams getting hard capped and all these different things. But the Lakers can upgrade this roster. And if they stand pat, I just don't think this current roster is good enough. I think they are good enough to win a round, maybe win a couple rounds in the West if the bracket breaks in their favor. But the Lakers need to make upgrades. LeBron James and Anthony Davis believe as much. They have been telegraphing as much. And LeBron is willing to put his money where his mouth is, literally, and take a pay cut for the Lakers to add another difference maker with the non-taxpayer MLE. So I think an ideal way that this plays out for the Lakers is LeBron takes a pay cut. The Lakers add a player like, let's just say Klay with that non-taxpayer MLE, and they do a salary dump trade, again, be it like a 3-for-1, 3-for-2, 2-for-1, or just a 1-for-0, attach an asset, maybe get back some money because you technically have to get something in a trade. And then you open up another roster spot and maybe you add another wing. Some names that I've reported and have heard are Jeremy Grant, Kyle Kuzma, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Cam Johnson. Those are 4 names I reported last night, 4 names I reported on The Athletic today. So any one of those 4 guys, and then also try to clear that roster spot and the additional money to keep Max Christie. So if the Lakers can keep LeBron, add a Klay Thompson, maybe add another wing in a trade, and retain Max Christie, all of a sudden, I really like that roster. And maybe they open up a couple roster spots and you can add another big man for the vet minimum. And that big man is a bit more defensive minded, a bit more of a physical guy. Maybe you add another point guard with a minimum contract. Like at this point, you're going to be operating with minimums. And who knows, maybe they keep D'Angelo Russell in this scenario, though. As I reported last night, I've been told the Lakers are going to be aggressive in pursuing potential trades for him. But regardless of how this all plays out with LeBron and his contract and the exceptions and all of the financial implications over the next 24 hours or so, the Lakers have the power to upgrade this roster, and it's on them to do it. And there's no excuses. The trade market is there. Teams are making trades left and right. You have your superstar free agent willing to take a pay cut for you to sign someone if you can close the deal. So it's on the Lakers now. Like, I think this offseason has been encouraging so far. They added a young, bright, promising head coach in JJ Redick. They got arguably the steal of the first round in Dalton Connect, who fell out of the top 10 to number 17. They made history by drafting Bronny James and forming the first father-son duo in NBA history. D'Angelo Russell opted in, retaining that asset and giving them either their 4th best player back or a valuable expiring contract on the trade market. And then LeBron opted out, but wants to re-sign and is willing to take a pay cut. So there's been a lot of factors going in the Lakers' favor. It's just going to come down to, can they convince a player to take a pay cut to sign that non-taxpayer MLE? And can they find a trade or two to upgrade the roster and create some financial flexibility and roster spot flexibility? And if they could do those things, I think the Lakers will be right there near the top of the West and have a legitimate chance, if they can stay healthy and things go in their favor, to go on a deep playoff run, which is all you can ask for if you're LeBron James and Anthony Davis. With that, that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll be back tomorrow on Sunday for the beginning of free agency, reacting to whatever happens, whether it's a trade or a signing or whatever, or maybe nothing happens. And it's pretty dull because the Lakers already have 14 players essentially entering free agency, and maybe they don't strike a deal with anybody. But I will be monitoring and reacting and reporting to it all. So be on the lookout for that. For those on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment and like this video if you enjoyed it. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to hit that follow button, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Sunday. I will talk to you then.